What's up, Falcons Nation? It's your boy Jew coming at you guys with another Atlanta Falcons video. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up. In today's video, I do want to recap yesterday's game, which was our final preseason game between our Atlanta Falcons and the Jacksonville Jaguars. We did come away with the victory. It was our first home game of the season and the first home game this preseason as well. And we did finish the preseason schedule off with a record of 2-1, and I was really impressed yesterday with yesterday's game. I do feel like yesterday's game probably was the best preseason game in my opinion, because you guys know that I'm huge on the trenches, and I feel like in yesterday's game we really did a good job of dominating the trenches in yesterday's game. A lot of players stood out in this game. It made it really hard, I think, for Coach Arthur Smith and Terry Fontenot for cutting this roster down to 53 men, because everybody competed this whole preseason and training camp. These players have really competed. These young guys have came in and they really competed hard in this preseason and training camp. In yesterday's game, a lot of players stepped to the forefront, and I think it's a lot of guys that's going to be right on that fringe of that 53-man, making that 53-man roster. The first player that I want to highlight in this post-game review is Derek Tangelo, number 99. He stood out to me in this game. He's a defensive lineman. He plays that defensive tackle position, and you guys know we've struggled the last couple seasons with interior pressure. And to me, he's a guy that with yesterday's game and the way that he performed, I think he's going to make this 53-man roster based upon his performance yesterday. And he's been a guy that stood out to the coaching staff since he's came in as an undrafted rookie. He's the guy to me yesterday that was one of the players of the game. He had 2 tackles for loss, 5 tackles in the game, but he was getting pressure consistently all game long. He's a player that played with Arnold Ebiketie at Penn State. So those guys have that chemistry already. But yesterday, to me, he did a really good job in the running game and also in pass rush. He came away with 1 sack in the game. So I definitely think that he's a guy that will make this roster based upon his performance in training camp, and definitely in the game, the way that he played last night or in yesterday afternoon's game, he performed really well. Another player that really stood out in yesterday's game was Quadri Olison, which is the running back, my third-year running back. He played really well in this game as well. He had a touchdown, and I think that he could be a player as well that makes this roster based upon the way he played all training camp long, and the way that he played in yesterday's game as well. Whether it was him scoring on the goal line or the way he ran in the first couple games of the preseason, he had a couple big runs. And to me, he's worked on his pass protection, and he's also worked on his short area quickness. It looks like he's definitely worked on his vision of being able to follow his blocks and things of that nature, and knowing when to accelerate through holes and things of that nature. He did a really good job in this last game. So I think he could be another player that's a fringe player that may be on that border of making a roster. But I think based upon his training camp performance and based upon the way he played yesterday, I think he'll be a guy that makes the roster. Now, a guy that I think that may not make the roster, but he played really well yesterday, is Caleb Huntley. He's the running back out of Ball State. And he was on our practice squad, I believe, last season, but he ran the ball really well yesterday as well. He had a touchdown in yesterday's game. But all of the running backs that was out there, Tyler Algier, all of those guys had 1 touchdown yesterday. And to me, we did a good job of controlling both the offensive line and the defensive line. We did a great job of controlling the trenches pretty much the whole game. We did a really good job. But I think Caleb Huntley may be a guy that makes the practice squad. I'll be shocked if he makes the 53-man roster, just because we're loaded at running back. I talked about this a little bit in my pregame show, where I talked about, somebody probably will get cut or not be able to make the 53-man roster, because you pretty much have Cordell Patterson, which is going to guarantee make this roster. Damian Williams will make the roster. Tyler Algier. I feel like those 3 guys are kind of set in stone. So that's 3 running backs already. And then you have guys like Avery Williams that plays special teams that'll probably make the roster just based off of him being a special teams player. So I don't think that they'll be able to carry 5 and 6 running backs on the active roster. So I think Quadri Olesen will probably be the guy that makes it over Caleb Huntley, just because of his experience. And to me, he played the best out of the 3 games in the preseason. If we had to go with Caleb Huntley or Quadri Olesen, I would go with Quadri, because to me he had the better of the 3 games. To me, he stood out pretty much in all the preseason games that we had. But with that being said, those were the guys that really stood out in this game. On the defensive side of the ball, it was Derek Tangelo. The running backs, to me, all of those guys ran well. Caleb Huntley, Quadri Olesen, and Tyler Algier, all of those guys ran really well. But I think it was, like I said, all in all, it was a really solid game. I was just really impressed with the way that we fought in the trenches. You guys know that I'm big on offensive line and defensive line play, being able to control the game, control the tempo of the game. And I think that we did a really good job of doing that in this last preseason game. It's going to be very interesting heading into week 1 against the Saints in 2 weeks to see how well we compete against them, being that we didn't really see many starters out there on the field in that final preseason game. But I love what I seen. Like I said, out of the trenches, to me, the theme of yesterday's game was the Falcons are building that identity of being able to control the trenches, control the tempo of the game, and playing that physical style football where you're running the ball, you're grinding out the clock. And that's what we did yesterday. Those runs that were, 2 and 3 and 4 yard runs became 9 and 10 yard runs in the fourth quarter, because we basically wore down the defense and wore down the Jacksonville Jaguars in yesterday's game. So Arthur Smith is doing a great job. Him and his coaching staff, Terry Fontenot, they've done a great job of establishing that chemistry. The players are establishing that chemistry, and I think that they've done a great job of laying the foundation of what this Falcons team will be about, building that winning culture, building that identity of being a team that's going to run the ball down your throat, play solid defense, and be able to make plays, get the ball out your hands quick. As the quarterbacks, Desmond Ridder played really well, Marcus Mariota, those guys played really well in this preseason of getting the ball out quick into those wide receivers' hands and allowing those guys to run after catch. So I'm really impressed with what I've seen in this preseason, and I'll have a lot more content coming for you guys. But with that being said, this been your boy Jew. As always, Falcons Nation, rise up. Peace.